Morning, everyone. Welcome to our webinar on how to engage with the high-level political forum in July of next year. I see that people are joining, which is wonderful. Please bear with us as we wait for a few more participants to join. We will begin the presentation in 1 minute. Okay, looks like we have a full house here now. Welcome to this webinar on how to engage on VNRs, SDG reports, and regional mechanisms for Hlpf, the High-Level Political Forum 2022. I am Bethany Brown. I am a Human Rights Advisor for the International Disability Alliance, and I support the work of the Stakeholder group of persons with disabilities, together with Elizabeth Lockwood from CBN Global. And we are so glad to have you all here with us today. I would like to start with a few little housekeeping items. First, we have International Sign, Spanish, and French interpretation today. You can click the globe icon at the bottom of your screen to switch your language. The CC button below will offer closed captioning, and the link for the CART services is available in the chat. You can ask questions to our speakers throughout the session using the Q&A function, the button below, and we will do our best to get through all of your questions. If you have any questions or problems throughout this session, you can message Erin Harden in the chat or email her. Her email address has been posted in the chat. Today, we will be dividing the session into 2 portions. We'll have a session where we have some wonderful experts with great experience sharing a little bit about the ways to engage with the high-level political forum in advance. And we've left the whole second part of our session for questions and answers. So please be thinking about anything that you are curious about. We would love to have a rich conversation. If you have a question, somebody else probably has that question too. So don't be shy, please ask it. We will begin our session today with Suleiman Abdulmani Uja, an Organization of Persons with Disabilities representative and a Stakeholder group of persons with disabilities representative at the 2019 High-Level Political Forum. He will be speaking with us today about an overview of the High-Level Political Forum and the themes and goals. And with that, I have the pleasure to hand the floor over to Suleiman. Thank you.
Good afternoon, good morning, good evening, wherever you are. It's my pleasure to be here with everyone today to present, to talk about my experience about the high-level political forum. As one of the stakeholder person with disability, truly, this high-level political forum is very key in the process of the inclusion of persons with disability, in mainstreaming them into the society, and as a strong voice for persons with disability organization from Nigeria. To start with, our strategy starts from the home country. If we must promote the inclusion of persons with disability at the high level, the high level is divided into two different clusters, the government cluster and the CSO clusters. From the CSO clusters, persons with disability may have access to it. They may be included in the CSO cluster, but they should also be able to stand alone. And in the high-level political forum, persons with disability movements need to know, they need to understand the concept of the high-level political forum, because it is a place where strong advocates, strong advocacy, strong lobby happens with respect to policies, implementation of the Agenda 2030. The high-level political forum focuses more on the SDGs. We also need persons with disability to have a constructive engagement. We should know how to plan our objectives, and on how best we can be included in the government policies with respect to our priorities in the SDGs. As pointed out in the targets and indicators. Yeah, I have been with the disability movement in Nigeria. The government hardly include us as persons with disability, but we made sure that we interact with some CSO, Organization of Persons with Disability, and open doors to get information and know when the government may have calling meetings on their planning for the high-level political forum. For example, like the Voluntary National Review. It's part of the high-level political forum, and every country have this Voluntary National Review two times in between 2 to 3 years in the 15 years of the SDGs. So it is a choice of the country to select when they want to have the review. The country government present their reports on how they have been able to implement some of the specific indicators and the targets of the SDGs and their highlights. For some of us in the disability movement, we also need to follow it through and compare what reports they are presenting with the reality, because most often persons with disability are left behind. non-disabled persons represent persons with disability, and the disability movements are not involved, even in the implementation of the decision that is going on. My first experience was in 2019, when we went for the high-level political forum, and honestly, there is a serious gap in the disability movement when it comes to high-level political forum, because my first contact was there. At home, I have no idea. And so I made contact with my colleague in the disability movement. Were you included in this implementation? Were you included in the planning? There is a serious gap from the disability movement umbrella body in Nigeria. They were not aware, but other individual persons, organization of persons with disability were aware, meaning the government decide to favor some group over the others while leaving out the representative organization. Then within the high-level political forum itself, I also understand that there is a mechanism put in place on how persons with disability can be mainstreamed and include fully in the platform, starting from the country level to the regional level, and then to the UN level. And again, it also taught me that in participating in that high-level platform, there must be a good strategy within the movement of the organization of persons with disability, that their voice must be the same so that they would be able to represent themselves. This is because the stakeholders, the stakeholder group of persons with disability, the stakeholder group of persons with disability was established, and they put more focus on persons with disability in mainstreaming them into the general high-level political forum. The VNR some of the indicators that relates to persons with disability how they live the issue, how they capture the issue of persons with disability in the VNR report. It will give more understanding, more in-depth into the country's agenda on how they carry along persons with disability. I truly believe that persons with disability at the regional and the country level need to wake up and knows the policy and the strategy on how they can be included into the government agenda, the policy framework of government with respect to SDGs, and the specific indicator that they work for. Hoping that persons with disability on this platform will be able to pick some of the important key actions and be able to include and work with it in their country level as a disability movement, so that no one will be left behind in the agenda of mainstreaming disability. as the SDG goal, Agenda 2030. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Suleiman, for that excellent introduction, for highlighting the value of the HLPF at the national level and the importance of a twin track approach, working together with mainstream civil society organizations and joining together with other organizations of persons with disabilities for our priorities and working together to speak with one voice. These are very important points. And to go into a little bit more detail now about the voluntary national reviews process, that national level process, we are fortunate to have with us today Ollie Henneman and Asim Dio. First, we'll hear from Ollie Henneman, who is the Global Coordinator at Action for Sustainable Development, a global platform supporting civil society and citizen action for the delivery of the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development and the Paris Agreement on Climate Change. He is also the coordinator of the Major Groups and Other Stakeholders Task Group on VNRs. And we are very glad to welcome you to the meeting today, Ollie. The floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Bethany. It's wonderful to be here with all of you and to be able to share some ideas. I think it's really noticeable that each of the different constituency groups and key bodies that are active around the SDGs are starting their planning much earlier this year to make sure that we are all in a strong position for next year's VNR and HLPF that comes around in July 2022. So I wanted to just give you some further information from the point of view of my organization, Action for Sustainable Development, and from the task group, which Bethany has mentioned, which groups together a number of us across the major groups and other stakeholders. So just for a little bit of context, and I appreciate some of you on this call will already be very familiar, but there is this process of the major groups and other stakeholders, which started back in 1992 alongside the Rio Earth Summit of the UN. And at that time, there were 9 stakeholder groups. And over time, these have been expanded now to include 21 different stakeholder groups. And that includes NGOs. I am one of the organizing partners of the NGO major group, as well as, for example, women's organizations, youth organizations, persons with disability, older persons, indigenous peoples, and so on. So each of those different constituencies then self-organizes, as you are, and comes together to share ideas alongside the high-level political forum and alongside those national review processes, the VNRs. And one of the principles that we all share, those of us who are involved in this process, is to ensure that that process is as broad and open and inclusive as possible, and that it's based in human rights, gender, equality, and non-discrimination. So I'm really glad to be able to join you. And as I say, there is a coordination mechanism that helps to connect between these different stakeholder groups. And then within that grouping, we've established a task group specifically on the VNRs. And I'm one of those who helps to guide along the task group on the VNRs, together with my colleague Rina, who's based in the Asia-Pacific Regional Coordination Mechanism, as well as Ricarda Motschilning from the Education and Academia stakeholder group. So now moving on to the VNRs in particular. As you've already heard before, the VNRs provide that annual review mechanism every year for the SDGs, and countries can choose when they wish to report. This time coming up, there will be 46 countries, so actually even more than last year reporting. 12 of those are first-time reporters. 29, though, are reporting for the second time already. and 5 are actually reporting for the 3rd or 4th time. In particular, Togo, I believe, is one of those reporting for the 4th time. So there are countries now that have a little bit of experience of doing this and who we hope will be able to demonstrate real progress, because the first round was very, very superficial. And for our side, from the point of view of stakeholders, we think it's essential to work together to create our own independent spotlight reports. In many countries, you see those independent spotlight reports that provide a view from across civil society alongside the official reports. And some countries do then involve civil society in a consultation process. And we have been pushing with many of you over the years to ensure that those processes of consultation should be as open and inclusive as possible. And if there are countries that you know reporting this year and that you would like to find out more, and if you can't find the information, please do let us know through Bethany so that we can raise that with the UN, because the UN's guidance actually sets out that member states are supposed to open an inclusive process. So within our own task group, once we identify those countries that we now know about, the 46 countries, we will shortly be putting out an open call, an expression of interest to anyone from any of the stakeholder groups who might have an interest in being active in the civil society reporting at the national level. So if you're working in one of the countries that is doing a VNR in the coming year, we'd encourage you to fill in that. It'll be an online survey, and we'll make sure to share it with all of you. That online survey will be coming out hopefully by the end of this week. So we're starting the process earlier so we can gather expressions of interest from anyone who's active in a country that has a VNR. And we then, from within the different stakeholder groups, will identify some focal points who can help you to take forward those discussions and support connecting what's happening at the national level into the global process at the Hlpf that will be coming up in July. And we think it's really essential that that is led and driven by those of you who are most active in each of those countries that are under review. We'll be looking forward to hearing from the different partners and colleagues who are working in those countries. What are some of the challenges you're facing in your country, and how can we connect those statements into the official Hlpf? And once you've worked together to craft your own civil society view, there's normally an opportunity that, well, there will be an opportunity for at least one stakeholder representative to speak alongside the Hlpf in July. And we assume that it will still be possible to speak through online formats, although it may be that some elements also begin to happen in person again in July. So that's not yet clear exactly how that will function, but we'll be keen to make sure again that national views are able to be heard. So that open call will be going out by the end of this week. We'll then leave it open right through till the end of January to hear from anyone who's active in the countries. And there will be a series of additional webinars hosted together with the UN, with UNDESA, early in the new year, probably in January, to give you some further information around the official process. We're also talking to UNDESA about how we ensure that we as stakeholders are able to speak to the UN, the country representatives at the UN for each of those countries to make sure that we raise the importance of stakeholder views within each of those national processes. And just finally, before I close, I wanted to highlight that from our own organization, from Action for Sustainable Development, we have a small amount of resource, a small budget that is allocated by the Swiss government that we look to help to support national dialogues on the VNRs. And we are also just beginning that process to identify which countries we might be able to identify to help to provide a small amount of resource. We also have toolkits, and we're very keen to ensure that where those national dialogues take place, that they are as open and inclusive, and that they do bring in the voices of groups such as yourselves that are very active within each of the countries. And we then look to establish an independent people's scorecard, we call it, where the views of civil society as a whole, we would actually look to score progress on each of the goals, so that will be independent from the official assessment, because we know that the official VNRs often don't cover pick the goals that they think that they're doing well on. We want to know the real story. We want to hear where are the gaps, where are the challenges. So we look to work with many of you in the coming year, and we're certainly very open to any collaboration, and look forward to hearing more through Bethany and others who are on the call. So thank you once again for having me here today, and I look forward to further collaboration.
Thank you very much, Oli, for that robust overview, as well as all of your work organizing us and keeping accountability for the VNR processes. We will be looking out for that sign-up sheet from the task group, and we'll share it widely among our networks. Next, we will hear from Asim Dio. He's the Advocacy and Communications Manager for CBM Bangladesh, and he has some lessons learned and guidelines on VNRs and experience with OPDs engaging with VNRs to share with us today. Asim, thank you for being with us, and the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Bethany. Dear respected participants, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening from Bangladesh. As introduced already, I am Asim Dio, working with CBM Bangladesh Country Office as Advocacy and Communication Manager. So in this capacity, I had the opportunity to work with the OPDs for influencing the VNR process of Bangladesh. So I would like to share my experience and also the lessons learned and way forward, how we can work in the future for influencing the VNR particularly. From my experience, the early engagement and preparation was Bangladesh already submitted in 2 VNRs in 2017, the first one, and the second one was in 2020. So from the disability rights movement in Bangladesh, we had been able to slightly influence the first one, but the second one was missed away. Even for the first one in 2017, people with disabilities and OPDs were mostly left out from the mainstream consultation for VNR. And due to that negligence or left out situation, the disability movement, the organizations and OPDs, together they decided to form an alliance, which named as Disability Alliance on SDG. It was formed in 2017. And the first initiative of that alliance was to influence the VNR process to include people with disability through a position paper development and submitting that position paper to the SDG coordinator, which position sits with the Prime Minister's office, and also submitting that paper to the member of the Planning Commission, which is situated with the General Economic Division. And in order to do that, the Alliance decided to hire one consultant to develop the position paper. With the support from the Alliance members and with the leadership from Site Savers, the Secretariat, and also support from ADD International. So that consultant actually developed the methodology, reviewed the secondary literature, and also prepared questionnaire checklist for the consultation. And the consultation started. One consultation was held nationally, and 3 consultations held at subnational and local level OPDs, where union level OPD and OPD networks participated. Over 250 persons with disabilities representing over 100 OPDs, INGOs and NGOs, government representatives participated in that consultation. And the outcome of that consultations have been compiled drafted and reviewed, and finally it compiled as report. And what happened after that, we, on behalf of the Disability Alliance on SDG, one delegation team met with SDG coordinator and handed over that report, and also met the member of Planning Commission and handed over that report. After that, that report also published as a report so that wider people, wider audience, wider reader can read that report. As a result of that initiative, the actual VNR included one appendix on people with disability as a result of our advocacy. So it was the outcome, but it was not that good outcome what we worked for. That's why we have some lessons learned from that process. The start of the process was too late. When we started, actually, it was too late. Government already conducted many consultations already, bypassing the people with disability and their organizations. The process also missed out the opportunity to influence other mainstream platforms. In Bangladesh, we have citizens platforms on SDG. So we missed out this opportunity to tag with this common platform where we could raise our issue. It also missed out the opportunity to take the buy-in from the mainstream development actors, because most of the mainstream development actors were actively engaged with other platforms. And in this Disability Alliance, it was only the organizations who work with people with disability and the OPDs only. So we missed that opportunity to take the buy-in. And the process was mostly led by NGO and INGO. OPDs were there only to participate. So here I see the gap that the leadership of the OPDs was to some extent missed. The process was also isolated with no clear linkage or influence on the actual VNR process. So it was kind of isolated process, although at the end of the day, we could hand it over the report to the authority, but ultimately time ran out. So there was no clear linkage how this report is gonna influence the actual report. Based on those learnings, I would like to suggest some way forward for future. That is starting the process early. It is crucial so that we don't miss the boat. And also targeting the VNR process by the government to influence should be priority rather than initiating alternative VNR in isolation. So that is also another great learning we learned. OPD should take the leadership in the entire process, where INGO, NGOs, and civil society can play the role of facilitators. Proper planning with adequate time and resource should be the key, and it was missing during that time. VNR process should also be considered as part of continuous advocacy efforts, rather than seeing it as a one-off activity. So in most countries, it's seen as one-off activity. And also another one thing is a clear follow-up advocacy plan should be in place, which is still missing in Bangladesh also. At the end of my sharing, I would like to highlight on the introducing the Disability Alliance on SDG. It has been formed with common objectives like becoming as the common platform for discussing and knowledge sharing on disability and development, particularly on SDG and disability. Also monitor and track the progress of SDG implementation at country level. Identify the scope, build linkage, engage with like-minded national and international forums, and also engage with government authorities to ensure that the inclusion and engagement of persons with disabilities into the planning and implementation process of development activities to achieve SDGs. By doing this advocacy efforts, this alliance already achieved some few things, I would say. It could, to some extent, influence the VNR 2017 through producing alternative VNR, but this is not the ultimate way of doing this. Making the voice of people with disabilities heard in Global Disability Summit in 2018. So it was also another great effort. And another great achievement, I would say, under this Disability Alliance on SDG, we conducted one baseline, which is titled as Sustainable Development Goals and Disability, a baseline of Bangladesh. So it is a document where we can see against each goal and indicator, what is the baseline and what we want to achieve by 2030. And now currently there are two burning issues for advocacy. It is going on, influencing the national census, which is going to take place this December, and also influencing or taking the voice of grassroots people with disabilities to Global Disability Summit in 2022. Thank you very much for listening to me. It was my pleasure to share my small experience with you. I hope it is clear that how the country level practical experience works in the VNR process. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Asim, for sharing your experiences with us. It's such a good example to hear about the work of the Disability SDG Alliance and the lessons learned around continuous advocacy and starting early, which is what we're all trying to do here. What good insights for us to keep in mind as we plan our work for the coming year. I will take this moment to pause and remind you all of the opportunity to use the question and answer function at the bottom of your screen. I see we already have many questions to kick us off, which is great. And next, we will discuss the SDG reports. We have a change in program here. Henry Murillo Salazar has had an unavoidable scheduling conflict this morning. So we are very grateful to have Rosario Galarza with us. She needs no introduction for many of you. She worked for many years with RIADIS in Latin America, and we are fortunate to have her as a member of our team in the IDA Secretariat now, where she has been supporting OPDs in their work on SDG reports. And so with that, I will hand the floor over to Rosario and give her a special thank you for being with us on such short notice. Rosario, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you, Bethany. Thanks so much for inviting me. I know that I am here to support Henry because he's flying back to his country after having participated in the bridge TOT in Kenya. Well, I am here to talk about the experience of IDA in the elaboration, in supporting OPDs to elaborate the SDG reports, alternative SDG reports. And I'm going to talk especially about the experience in Latin America because it was the topic that Henry was going to address. To give you some context, in 2021, there were 44 countries which submitted the voluntary national reviews to the high-level political forum. And from these countries, 9 were from Latin America. And of these countries in Latin America, 3 of them submitted the voluntary national review for the first time. It was Cuba, Bolivia, and Nicaragua. 2 of them submitted the voluntary national review for the second time, Dominican Republic and Paraguay. And 4 of them submitted the voluntary national review for the third time, And these 4 countries were Guatemala, Colombia, Mexico, and Uruguay. And due to the support that IDA provided in order that these countries can prepare the alternative SDG reports, Guatemala, Colombia, Bolivia, and Dominican Republic decided to do this task. Guatemala was the first one to finish the report, and then was Colombia. Bolivia now is in the process to submit the final version of the report, and Dominican Republic, they completed the report due to the funding provided by European Union in a project that they have with human rights. But why is important the participation of OPDs in the elaboration, in the preparation of these SDG reports, alternative SDG reports? It's very important because, I mean, it's the best way to make a reality this principle of the 2030 agenda about leave no one behind. If we want to participate, definitely we are engaging with this process and we are monitoring the implementation. And we also are making a reality this phrase that nothing about us without us, because we need to participate in all the processes, not only in processes regarding to disability, but also more, we need to give more emphasis in all the processes, because we are talking about a twin track approach about disability issues, but also to mainstream disability in all the other fields. And also it's very important because it's a way to strengthen the capacities of OPDs to participate in different monitoring processes. And also we try to enhance the capacity of analysis of OPDs, especially when they are reviewing the voluntary national reviews that the governments have submitted before. That's why in case, for instance, of Guatemala, they decided to form a coalition. And with this coalition, they included not only gender balance, but also geographical balance, not only people from the capital, also for other regions, and also persons with different disabilities, especially because IDA wants to prioritize the participation of underrepresented groups, especially persons with psychosocial disabilities, persons with intellectual disabilities, persons with deaf blindness, and others that are less visible in the disability movement. And also we want to promote an active and effective participation of OPDs and persons with disabilities. The modalities that we use in order to support these OPDs to prepare the reports was to make some online trainings, conduct some introductory trainings about the relevance of SDGs and the relationship with CRPD, and also conduct participatory meetings in order that these groups, Guatemala, Colombia, and Bolivia, can decide by themselves what would be the goals and targets that they want to prioritize in this report. In case of Guatemala, for instance, they prioritize the SDG 3 and 16. In case of Colombia, they decide to prioritize SDG 8, 10, and 16, and Bolivia, SDG 4, SDG 3, and SDG 8. Well, there, we try to have a consensus and agreement with all of them. And also they try to, in some countries, they hire a consultant, but in Colombia and Guatemala, they decided to divide the work by themselves and start to draft the report. Also, in case of Guatemala, they engage with the focal point of the BNR in their country. And finally, they have a meeting with them, and the government accepted to include the executive summary prepared by OPDs in the BNR that is going to be published soon in the website. I think regarding the lessons learned, I think the lessons learned is that for OPDs, especially in Colombia, Guatemala, and Bolivia, they don't know much about the concept of coalition. But now, because they had to form a coalition to do that, they are also working in coalitions to not only to do the implementation of the SDGs, but also to participate in other implementation processes for other UN treaty bodies and other mechanisms. And also they have now they have a clear understanding about the reasonable accommodations needed for different persons with disabilities, because they are aware now of the importance to include or to prioritize the underrepresented groups. And they also are consolidating their capacities and the analysis of the BLR submitted by the government. And they are also developing advocacy strategy in order to continue doing this kind of reports to implement SDGs and other UN treaty bodies. I think this is a real example of how OPDs can participate actively and effectively in this kind of processes, and definitely IDA will be supporting that during next year. That's why we encourage all of you as organization of persons with disabilities to start to think about developing alternative SDG reports, especially because this year, next year in 2022, SDG 4 regarding inclusive education and SDG 5 regarding gender empowerment will be reviewed in the high-level political forum. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Rosario, for that important push for the topics that are under review in the HLPF, and for highlighting some of the lessons learned with the work that took place last year for organizations of persons with disabilities. I think it's really important how both you and Asim have underscored the importance of organizations of persons with disabilities and their allies coming together in coalitions. And thank you again for being with us on such short notice. Next, we'll turn to looking at engagement with regional mechanisms. And this is something that I think that we could all learn a lot more about. I'm looking forward to hearing some more from Vilani Remen-Nassau, the co-chairperson of the Pacific Disability Forum and the focal point for the Disability Constituency of Asia Pacific CSO Exchange Mechanism. She is also an IDA board member. We're very pleased to have you with us today. Vilani, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Bethany. I guess it's quite of midnight here in Palau. I'm based in Palau. It's a tiny, small island country in the Pacific. So I come from one of the major regions in the world, Asia Pacific. As Oli has shared and the other panelists, so there's a major group of stakeholders, and there's also different constituencies that are a member of the major group of stakeholders, and there's also, which is also including persons with disabilities. But for persons with disability, we have our own stakeholder group of persons with disability, which represent the civil society body of persons with disability. And this is also consisting of OPDs. For the region, let me give you an example of the regional mechanism which I am located in the Asia Pacific. Asia Pacific is one of the 5 major global regions as defined by UN. We have a mechanism, a strong and well-established coordinating mechanism in the Asia Pacific, which is called Asia Pacific Regional Civil Society Engagement Mechanism. I work closely with Rina, so I'm also very I learned experience from this, from Rina as well. So in this, we call it the APRSM for short. We consist of different constituencies, such as women, persons with disabilities, and others. So in this APRSM, we have our Asia Pacific Disability Constituency, and I'm a focal point for the Asia Pacific Disability Constituency. we have many roles. Our activities are organized in relation to SDGs and in our participation for members and other active community members or other members who wants to participate in the Asia Pacific Forum on Sustainable Development. Not to mention that Asia Pacific has also 5 sub-regions. Our objectives or our roles is also to raise awareness, to amplify advocacy efforts towards CRPD compliant SDG implementation. We participate in regional UN, in other processes and opportunities, and we also build the community raising awareness on CRPD compliant SDG implementation. The establishment of our disability constituency within the Asia Pacific, it's quite a different. We know that there's a role of focal point. We encourage for membership, participation. These are very crucial component of the constituency because we share information, we create opportunities, we coordinate joint messages, and we also do advocacy outreach. We also encourage membership and participation. We have our own listserv. We have our own email addresses. I will post this also on the chat box of how to join the listserv in Asia Pacific for those who are in Asia Pacific region. For this particular region, I think it's also a learning experience for me because it's quite a big region in the world. With the engagement and structure. Of course, in the Asia Pacific region, myself as a focal point, there's 5 sub-regions in the Asia Pacific. So there's East and Northeast Asia, North and Central Asia, the Pacific, Southeast Asia, South and Southwest Asia. So you can imagine those 5 sub-regions, there should be a sub-regional focal point that will work together with myself as a focal point to carry out the facilitation of the working groups, organize meetings, maintain official reports of meetings, participation of members, and moving forward with action steps. So, but this is also a challenge for us in the Asia Pacific. I think it's also due to COVID restrictions and many other internal issues. But we plan to have this in place next year. But as we also as we continue moving forward, making this constituency active, we created our 3 working groups, which is we have advocacy working group that is task is to build the membership, raising awareness in the region and drafting media messages, capacity building working group, establishing processes, overseeing selection, drafting speeches, interventions, reports, submissions. And we also have communication working group. We raise awareness about the Constitution. So these working groups we have currently in the Asia Pacific Disability Constituency, and these have been actively working, collaborating, volunteering ourselves to maintain our constituency active and going. I know there's been a kind of a slow down movement on the constituency itself, but it's also lessons learned for us of improving the communication in the Asia Pacific. You can imagine 5 sub-regions in the Asia Pacific. We need to improve communication among all the members and persons with disabilities. It's also a learning experience of what there have been some successes, what have been challenges, so that we can improve. We can organize ourselves, prioritize ourselves, what are those priorities, and how we can move forward with those priorities with actions that will also impact and benefit our local context in Asia Pacific. And of course, to continue supporting and fostering more cohesive teams. So this regional mechanisms is one of Asia Pacific Regional Engagement Mechanism, APRSM, is one of the regional mechanisms where disability constituency sits in, and we've been participating in all meetings at the region, Asia Pacific region, as well as also trying as much as I can to coordinate sub-regions, even though there were no sub-regional focal points, of how we can reach out to these sub-region focal points and how we can ensure that we continue and drive the movement and see how we can are those challenges and learning lessons that we can improve better for next year. So yeah, that's what I can share with the regional mechanisms so far, and open for any questions. Thank you, Bethany.
Thank you very much, Vilani. That is an incredible amount of organization, and it's no wonder that that the organizations of persons with disabilities in your region are so well supported. I would urge those on the call to take advantage of Vilani's offer to join the listserv. I understand it's a very active listserv, and it's a great way to get plugged in. There's a lot that we can learn from this experience. So we're almost ready to hand it over to a question and answer period. Before we do, I would like to announce that the stakeholder group of persons with disabilities has a position paper that's almost ready for inputs from organizations of persons with disabilities. Every year, each stakeholder group within the major groups and other stakeholders prepares a position paper for the HLPF. And it covers each of the areas under discussion at the HLPF. In this year, we'll have a discussion of inclusive education and gender equality, as Rosario mentioned. We'll also discuss life on land and partnerships for the goals. What we've prepared is an annotated outline. So we've done some of the background research and started drafting the paper already. But if you have experience that you'd like to contribute or share, we'll be putting out a call for interest in contributing to this paper later this week, and you can sign up, and then we'll send you part of the paper for you to be able to add to. We've tried to do some of the basic background heavy lifting research ahead of time to make it very easy for you to be able to just add your expertise to this paper so that it really reflects the experiences of organizations with persons with disabilities across the world. Even if you don't have 20 hours to sit down and write something like this, we're very grateful to Latanya Mills for all of her work to get us to this place where we have something to share with you. So we'll be sending out an email asking for expressions of interest in participating in the position paper process. And the final paper with everyone's input will be out in mid-January. So hopefully it will be something that will be of use for organizations of persons with disabilities around the world, whether they're choosing to engage in the VNR process or the regional mechanisms, or preparing an SDG report, as Rosario was discussing. And so with that, we will turn over to the question and answer period. Thank you very much to everyone for adding so many questions to this session. It's great to see. I am going to start with a question from George Corey. Are stakeholder group of persons with disabilities representatives allowed to join the government cluster meetings, not including VNRs, as observers? Now, a question about government cluster meetings, I think that's a question that I would ask Asim and Ollie to address. Would either of you like to take that one?
Sure, I can take it if you'd like, Bethany.
Thank you, thank you.
I mean, this is different for each country, and I think the challenge that we've found over the years is that different countries engage in consultations in very different ways. There are guidelines from the UN Secretary General, and those guidelines do highlight the importance of what's called a whole of society approach, whereby the consultation should be open to all stakeholder groups, but it is voluntary. And so it's up to each government how they choose to implement that and how they choose to host those meetings. And we know that in some cases, those meetings are more inclusive than others. But what I would say, as I mentioned in my presentation earlier, is that once we have put out this call for expressions of interest, if you are active in one of the VNR countries, please do get in touch, through Bethany and through that form that we're going to have, so that we know which are the key groups that are active in each country, and we can try to also put pressure from the New York end that they should be opening up those processes when they get started in the new year.
Thank you very much. And I see we have another question from Noma Tanso Mapande. How do we get a monitoring body for the African Union? I've noticed the officials in the disability portfolio are not disabled. And for everyone's information, I am reading out these questions so that our interpreters can share the information in sign and in other languages that we have available. If anyone would like to post a question in another language, we can work with that as well. So this question about monitoring in the African Union is sort of a dual question. It's a question of a regional mechanism, and it's also a very specific question to a particular region. And I wonder if perhaps Suleiman might have some insights to share with us about that. Suleiman? If you are still with us. Okay, perhaps he isn't available.
Yes.
Yes?
Oh,
okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, thank you very much for that question. Really, when you talk of portfolios, in the African Union, I have also been trying as a person this day, because on disability inclusion, it's not the administration. The African Union Disability Desk is a non-disabled person, yes. And however, we have been trying to advocate on more inclusive and tracking the African Union Disability Portfolio through the African Disability Forum, ADF, which is one of the strong organizations of disability movement and voice for persons with disability in Africa. I think just about last week, I have an opportunity to interact with the executive director, and he said that they are trying seriously to adopt some strategy on how to make sure that African Union have more disability recognition within their system. That is what I have to add. African governments must take seriously sensitization and awareness on disability concepts, disability inclusion, disability accessibility. Because most of the African countries are underdeveloped, and again, persons with disability themselves needs to come with a strong voice, knowing well that African has diverse culture, diverse tribe. We have French, we have English, we also have Arabic.
South Africa.
And the Zulu, which is in South Africa. The Zulu, sorry, in South Africa. So we must connect together to advocate for open that as we progress, some changes will happen at the African Union based on our advocacy. Thank you.
Thank you kindly, Suleiman, for that robust answer. Very, very helpful insights. The next question we will answer is a question I will give to Rosario. I will read it now. I like the sentence, "No one left behind." However, I live in Guatemala and know by fact that indeed, in my country at least, most persons with disabilities are left behind. I know these processes are difficult to drive forward, so I think alternative strategies should be developed and implemented to actually provide access and effective opportunities to the vast majority of people with disabilities who do not belong to OPDs for the subject to actually move forward. So Rosario, could you talk with us a little bit about how to reach persons with disabilities who don't belong to organizations of persons with disabilities with this idea of no one left behind in mind?
Okay, thank you so much for this question, Bethany. Yeah, definitely it's very important. Sometimes in the context of some countries, for instance, in Latin America, as you say, Guatemala, no, it's very difficult to, especially to reach maybe to persons who live in indigenous communities, because you know Guatemala have a lot of indigenous communities, and sometimes it's very difficult to reach them. But I think what we do is trying to also consult with organizations of persons with disabilities if they have knowledge about other people who live in these communities and maybe other underrepresented groups. We have like a network of contacts in each country, and we try to talk to all of them in order that they can provide some contact to people who maybe we know that are not representing or are not participating in this kind of webinars of training or workshops. That's why this is, this is one way to do that. Also through Realis, because Realis is a regional member of AIDA, and Realis also has a large number of contacts, has also emails and other WhatsApp contacts, and we try to consult Realis about that. And also the national organizations in this country. In case of Guatemala, we try to contact not only, if there's not any federation, we try to contact national organizations of different disabilities, for instance, National Organization of the Blind, of Physical Impairment, if there's like maybe National Federation of the Deaf, we try to contact this organization in order to try to leave no one behind. But definitely at the end of the day, it's true that even though we maybe try to reach as much people as we can, sometimes there are people that left behind, but we try to improve because this is experience that we have this year. We try to improve this experience in the future years. And definitely if you can help us to do that, we really appreciate it. We are really welcome to have more suggestions about how to reach most persons with disabilities, if you consider that maybe there are other measures that we haven't implemented yet.
Thank you very much, Rosario. And we have just a few minutes left, so I'm going to kind of take a question that's come up in the chat or in the question and answers a few different ways and pose it to all the panelists. It's a question, it's a very important question. It's a question about resources. So how do OPDs form coalitions? It's something that we've heard can be very labor intensive and can be very resource intensive. So what mechanisms are out there to help support organizations of persons with disabilities to engage in these pre-Hlpf processes?
You want me to answer this question, Bethany?
Yes, I would love to have an answer from you. I see Suleiman has also turned on his camera.
Okay.
And so Rosario, you have the floor and we'll hear from Suleiman next.
Okay. Yes, I mean, according to the experience from this year, I think first it is very important to set up the concept of coalition, because sometimes organizations of persons with disabilities have a wrong idea about what is coalition. They consider coalition like a political party or something like that. And we need first to make them aware what is the relevance to work as a team, as a coalition, to include different voices. It's not only because we need to value diversity, it's also because we need to enrich the report. And the only way to enrich the report is to consider different voices, because sometimes maybe we consider that we face some barriers, but we are not aware that other barriers that are faced by other persons with disabilities, with different disabilities. That's why it's really important to first make like a small training about what is the importance of a coalition, what is the purpose of the coalition, and then try to make all the members of the organization reflect about that. And also they can easily think about that maybe it's not only a temporary coalition, not only for SDG reports, but also they can take advantage of this coalition to prepare other reports, for instance, to the CRPD committee, to the CEDAW committee, CRC, and others. And that's why I think it is very important the initial contact, initial conversation with OPDs, in order that they come deeply understanding about what is the idea to form a coalition. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Rosario. And Suleiman, you have the floor for the last word. We are almost out of time. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Yes, most important thing organization of persons with disability must have is one voice, as Rosario has said. They need to have a good strategy, good policy framework on how best they want to collaborate with other organizations, because it is not about only persons with disability, but how we can be included fully within the wider society. The wider society does not consist of persons with disability alone. That is where the strong strategy, the strong collaboration, and the framework should come from. And again, resources are available. It is for us to know how best to tap into the available resources, capacity building, training of the non-disabled CSO, so that they can come into promoting the rights and the voice of persons with disability. Even though persons would be at the forefront driving the process, while others non-disabled organizations will be there giving support. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Suleiman. And with that, I will say we have had a very good discussion here. So good, in fact, that we were not able to answer all of the questions in the Q&A. Please do email us with your questions and we will do our best to answer them after the program is over. With this, I would like to thank our CART team, our international and Nigerian sign interpreters, and the Spanish and French interpreters. And a big thank you to our logistics team and Aaron Harden for making this interpretation possible to allow for broad inclusion. Please be on the lookout for information from the stakeholder group on persons with disabilities. For more information, join the CRPD forum listserv. We'll put that in the chat. And we look forward to supporting you and working with you all for a great HLPF going forward. Thank you as well to our panelists for being with us today and to our attendees for making this such a rich discussion. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.